My fear on it is that I think that something, among other things, something quite dishonest has been going on,
Mm.
which is that Joe and Dave were covering for a couple of people in particular who are mates of theirs, who they deny are bad actors. And yet the more I look into them, the more appalling the bad actorness is. Just this morning, somebody sent something to me of one of the mates of one of these historians who's anti-Churchill and so on. And this is one of his mates and somebody he cites. And this, I won't give the publicity to the person by naming him. This guy in this video I watched this morning goes to the Holocaust Memorial in DC and just does a video about what horse shit it all is.
The Holocaust.
Yeah. And it's all seems to me to be kind of, lame and gay and fake. And we're all being told to believe this just to guilt us and, not falling for it anymore. You don't want to be you don't want to be in the orbit of somebody like that. You don't want to be encouraging that. You can easily as a right, and somebody who's been a small C conservative all my life. I mean, I had probably a lapse at university of a period where for about 5 hours I was on the left. but I've been broadly on the right most of my life. And just as the left should be totally not tolerating Che Guevara-ism, Maoism, Stalinism, Leninism, don't let the right, when they're on the up, when they're working, when they're actually doing some of the things that restrain some of the obscenities and overreaches of the left, don't use that time to try Hitlerism again. For God's sake.
Victory exposes an empty core. Douglas Murray warns that when you rewrite history, you rewrite victory. Erasing heroes invites tyranny. This isn't debate. It's civilization-scale gaslighting that gives dangerous liars a global megaphone. When ignorance is sold as purity and standards are called censorship, truth drowns in a sewer of hate. Protecting reality isn't a sin, it's survival. Are you serious about power or just performing it?
It's a difficult time to predict it. If it isn't headed off and countered and argued against, then I can certainly see how it would grow. What I think is happening, by the way, maybe this is a useful way into it, is what I think is happening is that when people are part of a movement that is reactionary, they have a problem at the moment of victory, which is, what do you do now? You won. I mean, your guy is in office. I think that people give away a lot about what they really mean to do when they do what they do at the point of victory. What did you want your victory for? Was it to own the libs, or, as you said in the recent piece, cry harder libs isn't a policy? That was something you could treat yourself to maybe in the Biden years, but not now. This is too serious. What some people do when they have a rather unformed philosophy, which is me being probably very snooty, of course, in saying that, but I think
you can't help your accent, Douglas.
But I just think that if somebody has a rather unformed philosophy, one of the things you do, and I mean, people do this when they're very young, I think we probably all did this, is that you look around for the stuff that was left behind to see if some of it was stuff you shouldn't have left behind. The left has done that for years, and parts of it have continued to celebrate, Che Guevara. Some of them, you see young leftists looking to see if they can do Maoism again or whatever. And the cleverer ones realize, no, 70 million people died and that's bad. And, so let's not try that again. And some of the less intelligent ones will fall into it. And some of the ones who actually are malevolent and want to do bad things will do this exercise.
Movements born in reaction struggle once they win. Victory exposes whether they had substance or just spite. Crying harder isn't governance, yet some on the right mistake trolling for ideology. Like young radicals rummaging through history's trash, they toy with discarded extremes. The smart reject Maoism, the dumb or malicious revive it. Likewise, the woke right risks resurrecting authoritarian ghosts under the guise of owning opponents.
I think the part of the right that's been victorious is weirdly treating itself to a version of this game. Not only have we won, but maybe we can look back and see why we lost for so long. And on the right, that version is, I suppose you get it in little bits of the Catholic right, still online and off, of sort of a Francoism admiration. You can sort of play it that way, and they do. But others are clearly trying again, and this is a very interesting explanation for this, because they're basically trying a Buchananite, Paulite right interpretation of the last century.
Buchanan being Pat Buchanan, the isolationist.
And there's a reason for that, which is that for all sorts of reasons we can both go into and know very well. Post-Iraq, post-Afghanistan, essentially the Republican Party lost an entire generation or two of foreign policy experts because they had been shown to be wrong, or wrong in part, or significantly wrong, or wildly wrong, evilly wrong, however you want to portray it. But by the time of the Trump era in 2015-16, nobody wanted to hear again from the old guard. Now, what that means is you have this huge gap in young people coming up because they don't want to hear from Dick Cheney. I mean, to put it at its most, they really don't want Dick Cheney to come out and tell them where they might be going wrong. And they wouldn't have wanted to have heard from Donald Rumsfeld when he was still alive, or from, any number of other people we could name. But that means that there's this vast land that needs to be grabbed, that people are wanting to grab. And one of the things they seem to be wanting to grab is, go back earlier than that, go back before that. Why did we get involved in World War II, we America?
Right's victory turns into nostalgia trip, scraping history for heroes while ignoring mistakes. Losing a generation of foreign policy pros after Iraq and Afghanistan left a vacuum younger grifters now fill. Romanticizing Buchananite or Francoist fantasies is dumb and dangerous. Learn from failures, not fetishize them. If you want national strength, rebuild competence, not cosplay reactionary myths. Are you serious about power or just performing it?
We got involved in World War II and we shouldn't have done it with blood and treasure, and maybe we could have just allowed the Nazis and the Soviets to fight it out. The fascists and the communists could have fought it out. That's a sort of interesting, that's an interesting essay to ask a 17-year-old history student to do. But it's not serious politics. And it's certainly not a basis for a policy. Go back a bit earlier, and you get the people who are now the reason why you've got this weird online right-wing anti-Churchillism. I wrote about left-wing anti-Churchillism because the left always wants to attack Churchill because they want to destroy the heroes. They want to take out and deracinate the public square. Take out Jefferson, take out Lincoln, take out Churchill.
The right has its own motivations.
Now the right has an iteration of this, and the right's iteration of it now, I don't want to say it all the right, we're talking about like inflection point people, really. Their aim is to say that it was Churchill who got America into the war, and Churchill who indeed got the world into the war. And this is, of course, ahistorical nonsense, but it's a very dangerous thing to play around with. And the way I see it is, and I've learned a bit more about this in recent months, but because I sort of didn't take it that seriously for a bit. But I think what they're trying to do is effectively a form of David Irvingism, which is David Irving, who was a once renowned historian of World War II in Hitler's Germany, who became more and more kooky as the years went on, or at least perhaps he revealed himself as the years went on. And he and others used to play this very dark game in the late 20th century, before it was effectively stopped in a courtroom when he was shown to be a Hitler apologist, was that they wanted to downplay the numbers of Jews killed in the Holocaust, up the number of people killed in, for instance, of the bombing of Dresden, find moral parity between the two, literally numbers parity, and then make the final move, which was actually the Nazis were better than the Allies.
Stakes are simple. Rewrite history and you rewrite victory. Douglas Murray slams Churchill revisionists as dangerous David Irving echoes, warning that moral parity with Nazis sanctifies fascism. This isn't nerdy debate, it's civilization-scale gaslighting. He proves cause and effect, erase heroes, invite tyranny. Numbers matter. Auschwitz isn't a talking point. Do we let liars recast atrocities
or fight to keep truth loud?
I think it's a version of that is starting to go around at the moment. At the same time, one cannot overestimate it, because this isn't something the president believes or is involved in. Marco Rubio doesn't, and so at the same time, I think we should not underestimate it, because it has a potential, among other things, to completely pollute the side that it's on.
Well, you take it seriously enough that in your recent appearance on Joe Rogan alongside comedian and libertarian Dave Smith, I'm certain that anyone watching this by now has seen that interview, but for those who haven't, go look it up after the show. You feel strongly enough about this that straight out the gate in this interview, where you were ostensibly there to promote your new book, you went right for it and criticized Rogan and Dave Smith for having kind of uncritical conversations, let's say, even praiseworthy conversations with amateur historians and others who are playing around in the way that you described David Irving playing around.
Yes.
Why were you willing to die on this hill? And let me explain what I mean by that. Joe Rogan has a bigger audience than probably all of CNN in a month. I mean, there's just no comparison. He is the King Kong of the podcasting space. There's a reason that everyone wants to go on that show, especially people promoting their books or promoting their work. And there's every incentive to keep him happy. So you'll continue to get invited on. You get invited on that show and you go right for it in challenging him and challenging Dave Smith. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I couldn't not. I mean, I just have a basic policy in my life, which is that if I, and I sometimes give this advice to students when I speak at universities. It's like, you just don't do things that make you feel worse about yourself. If there's something that's going to demoralize you, that you're going to feel terrible about afterwards, feel lesser about yourself, just try not to do it.
History is under revision. Murray shouts truth, erase heroes, invite tyrants. He warns Joe Rogan's platform amplifies dangerous amateur historians, reaching about 11 million listeners per episode. This isn't edgy debate. It's civilization at risk. Cause: celebrity plus historical illiteracy. Effect: moral parity with monsters. Who polices truth now? Speak up or watch history get stolen. Join the fight, tell your friends.
I literally have it in this sort of, could I look myself in the mirror tomorrow if I didn't do this? And the answer is no. And so I do it. I don't know if it's a hill to die on. The number of hills that I've been on in my life and the number of dying I've done. And so I don't know. I genuinely, it was not, I don't have anything against Joe. I was surprised that after a year and a half in Israel, 2 years of Ukraine, or 3 years, there had been so few people on who had in any ways mainstream views really about either conflict. I was surprised that he hadn't had anyone on who really, or almost no one on, who'd explained the Ukrainian case for self-defense against Putin. And I'm more alarmed in the last year and a half even to find that he had so few people on who'd explained the justification for Israel's war in Gaza, whilst going to people who I'm afraid, to tread back into the cesspool I managed to find myself in the weeks after that interview, I'm afraid is people who don't know what they're talking about. And I feel there's a very there's a lot that I feel like I trod into on that, but nevertheless I just felt I had to. I don't like that. I don't like the platforming of endless, weird, kooky voices from semi-self-taught people. So here's the problem as I see it.
But is the problem with being self-taught, or is
No, it's not. I mean, as I stressed repeatedly in the interview, anyone can say anything they want within the confines of the law. Anyone can have a view on anything. I'm for that.
Israel fights for survival while Hamas hides behind civilians. And yet, Western media platforms every half-baked peace guru with a Wi-Fi connection. Murray's right. Self-defense is not optional. It's existential. Ukraine bleeds against Putin's fascist empire. Israel bleeds against jihadists. But the mic goes to TikTok revolutionaries. Since October 7th, over 1,200 Israelis butchered, 250 hostages taken. What part of that is complicated? Whose side are you on?
I spent much of my career advocating for that. But that it doesn't mean just because some experts have let themselves down or let all of us down, it doesn't mean that you should simply lift the sluices of your society and allow all the sewage to just flow through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I see happening. And you see, the problem here is Joe is a very skilled podcaster. People don't realize how good he is until you see somebody who can't do what he does. But if he wants somebody to discuss MMA fighting, you will notice that he does not invite comedian Dave Smith, because comedian Dave Smith has never been in a fight or to a fight, or maybe he has, but I don't think he'd know how to talk about the jiu-jitsu. Maybe he would. Maybe it surprised me. But Joe would not have him on to talk about something that Joe knows about. So why does he have him on to talk about a conflict that the guy knows so little about? Somebody recently upped on X a snippet of an interview that Joe did a while ago with one of these pseudo-historians, where he says, nobody has a right to say that you're a neo-Nazi or Hitler apologist unless they've imbibed your work and listened to all of it. And, it's like talking to somebody who thinks they know about a country who's never been there. And I think, yeah, that was one of the points I was trying to make. I mean, I was pretty alarmed by I don't really follow fires I've started in general, but I was pretty alarmed by
the reaction.
I was pretty alarmed by the number of people who found it, including Joe and Dave, found it to be some kind of really weird, snooty, elitist thing to say, if you're going to write about a place, you should have been there or know about it. You should do some of the legwork.
Murray slices through the nonsense. If Rogan won't bring a comedian to analyse jiu-jitsu, why the hell let the same clown dissect Ukraine or Gaza? Expertise matters. You don't ask a plumber to perform heart surgery. Yet media keeps elevating pseudo-historians who've never stepped foot in Kyiv or Tel Aviv. It's sewage, unchecked, unfiltered, stinking up discourse. Since when did ignorance become a credential?
I was pretty alarmed about that simply because in old media, I certainly, that was a standard. Like, good God, the old media, legacy media let us all down in ways that you and I could riff about for a fortnight. But there are standards. One of them, for instance, is that, you cannot file columns about Gaza if you've never left Berkeley or San Diego or wherever. And just to play it another way around, I mean, if what I was saying was just such basic journalistic hygiene, which is, yes, if you're going to talk endlessly about a conflict, you ought to do what I do and at least put in the legwork. And it's kind of, in a way, it's insulting to all the many journalists who put themselves under dangerous and difficult positions to say, that's just, you don't need to do that. There's no, I can tell as much by sitting in Austin reading Google. And just to put it another way around, if there was a guy in China who was on Chinese state media, what other type is there, and endlessly wrote about the United States of America, didn't speak English, and had never been to the USA, but who endlessly told the audiences in China that America in the 21st century is no different from America in the 19th century. In fact, the KKK roams the streets of New York freely and persecutes our black brothers and sisters, and that segregation is still going on, and all sorts of other stuff like that. If we got wind of this guy, and we found out this is a guy in China who's never been to America, and he's telling the Chinese people about America, and it's so wrong, we would laugh at that.
If some state hack in Beijing claimed the KKK still goose steps through Manhattan without ever setting foot in America, we'd laugh him off as a propagandist. Yet we swallow the same garbage when self-styled experts in San Diego dictate Gaza's reality from a Google search bar. Journalism used to demand legwork, boots on the ground, risk, sweat. Now, keyboard warriors replace war correspondents. How pathetic is that?
We would think it ridiculous that such a person had platforms. So why, I ask, should it be the case that endlessly, if you want to hear about the reality of Israel and Gaza, get the comedian guy on, who's never been to the region, as he admitted on that podcast. In fact, not being to the region seemed to be some kind of badge of honor. It meant that he wasn't tainted by some of the perspectives he might have got. On the other hand, you'd have noticed that Israel isn't a white supremacist society governing a concentration camp in Gaza.
I think one of the dynamics at play here, and this goes beyond the conversation that you had with Smith on Rogan, I think it's just a bigger dynamic playing out right now, is over the past decade, probably longer, the left was in the business of making everything taboo. Even biological reality became taboo.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a backlash.
And the reaction the cultural right is having, the right, like broadly defined here, and I think it's breaking apart in all kinds of interesting ways, is no. You guys said everything taboo. We're making nothing taboo. And so the second someone comes around, as you tried to do in that conversation, and say, actually, you know what? The stigmatization of Holocaust denial, that's a good stigma. That's something we should keep around. The standard of going to a place that you write about, that's something we should keep around. What the listener, I think, can hear in that situation is, this is a person calling for cancel culture. This is a person calling for gatekeeping. And I find that dynamic extremely frustrating.
It's very frustrating.
How do you get out of that trap?
One, you got to exercise hygiene on your own side. And the fact that people have been kept out of the conversation who should have been in the conversation does not mean that absolutely everybody should be given the platform to spread untrue things.
So now, ignorance is sold as purity. People can literally say that I've never been to Gaza, therefore I'm unbiased. That's like saying I've never studied medicine, so I'm the best surgeon. Murray's fury is spot on. Standards aren't censorship, they're survival. Holocaust denial isn't free speech, it's intellectual sewage. When everything becomes permissible, truth drowns. Since when did gatekeeping facts become a sin? Isn't protecting reality itself the ultimate responsibility?
And it's going to be, like everything difficult in this life, it's going to take some dexterity, because all these fine corners that end up mattering, they do need careful thinking and careful treading. My fear on it is, I think that something, among other things, something quite dishonest has been going on, which is that Joe and Dave were covering for a couple of people in particular who are mates of theirs, who they deny are bad actors. And yet the more I look into them, the more appalling the bad actorness is. Just this morning, somebody sent something to me of one of the mates of one of these historians who's anti-Churchill and so on. And this is one of his mates and somebody he cites. And this, I won't give the publicity to the person by naming him. This guy in this video I watched this morning goes to the Holocaust Memorial in DC and just does a video about what horse shit it all is.
The Holocaust.
And it all seems to me to be kind of, lame and gay and fake. And we're all being told to believe this just to guilt us and, not falling for it anymore. You don't want to be in the orbit of somebody like that. You don't want to be encouraging that. You can easily, as a right, and somebody who's been a small C conservative all my life. I mean, I had probably a lapse at university of a period where for about 5 hours I was on the left. But I've been broadly on the right most of my life. And just as the left should be totally not tolerating Che Guevaraism, Maoism, Stalinism, Leninism. Don't let the right, when they're on the up, when they're working, when they're actually doing some of the things that restrain some of the obscenities and overreaches of the left, don't use that time to try Hitlerism again. For God's sake, don't be the thing that your enemies said you might be.
A guy filming himself at the DC Holocaust Memorial, sneering that it's fake, isn't edgy. He's a bad actor peddling poison. If the left must reject Stalin worship, then the right must boot Holocaust denial. Otherwise, you're not protecting debate, you're laundering hate under the banner of free thought. So, any thoughts on what Douglas Murray just discussed? Share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss any of our future debates.